My favorite climate change platforms. What are these and why are these important? Given the very large number of data and information repositories on climate change topics, there is a growing need to know how to identify good quality resources. Since climate change science has been around for a bit, some really good data holdings and research repositories have accumulated. Let's not miss the huge human interest story that's actually going on. Thousands of ordinary people around the world are involved in putting together information about what climate change is and how to address it. This episode looks at some of the good information out there, my favorites, and what we should be paying attention to about them. We'll talk about the quality bits, and we'll talk about a couple of the sites. We'll look at why these are useful for us ordinary people. I'm Paul Burns, and this is Climate Action Matters. We're a fact-based discussion about climate change and Canada's transition from fossil fuels. We put people in touch with good information and point to the best ways of getting involved. The question today is, what do I look for to identify the best information resources about climate change? Well, let's do some work and take a look. I'm going to use the word platform here to mean a website-based holding of data or articles on climate change. We can all imagine writers and scientists and business people and activists that do the good work of keeping their information straight. A lot of these platforms started this way and then accumulated over multiple years worth of updates and tracking. Others are mandated by intergovernmental organizations and have the participation of hundreds of scientists across the world. You'll see that the ones we take a look at today will spend a lot of time on footnotes and validated sources, peer feedback, transparent information, and really creative visualizations. What are the features to look for that make these well-managed online resources with good reference material? A look at these can help us steer clear of the noise that's out there, given the extent of the politics, and there are a couple of attributes to pay attention to. There's governance, there's sources, and design. So let's talk about governance. They have very clear descriptions about how they are governed and funded. They all have information about the organizations, including the names and backgrounds of individual board members, and they usually explain themselves as nonpartisan. They have a mission statement, and many of them, including the non-profit Canadian ones, will have financials posted, or annual reports and layouts of plans and achievements. You'll see in the examples coming up that it just takes literally a few minutes to find this information about governance. All of the favorites on the list have a common trait of readily observable, recognizable sources. There's a rich use of bibliographies and footnotes, and that's for each of the reports and data tables. There's constant reference to sources. It's true for the sites that are offering statistics or even long-form analysis reports. Also, the organizations themselves will disclose their associations to international or national level groups. And there's sources of funds, the records of all their work. And this is all really important. It sounds boring, but it's really important. This is the part about it's an inoculation against getting lost in the fact-free, opinion-based, well-funded gibberish. And it's doing the good work around sources is a key guardrail for us. And finally, design. A good part of this conversation is about how us regular people use these resources and how we can find them accessible. Some of it for sure is intense data tables and long scientific tomes and specialized information, but that's not really what's going on here. These are designed and laid out with regular people in mind. No obfuscations or messy infographics. The navigations and the filtering and the panels and thumbnails are all uniformly accessible and easy to use. The information is professionally pieced together with effective communications as a central concern. So these sites really have large masses of worldwide complex data made through design to be immediately informative and useful. Gone are the days, at least in these kinds of sites, where the references links don't work or they lead to nowhere, or there are claims without references. There are hundreds of information holdings on environmental and science subjects. Topics range from tracking CO2 and other emissions to news stories, citing new technologies, international commitments, counting trees. There's a lot of diversity. So let's take a look at the few of the high-profile ones that set good examples about how to use them. I hope you can see this as an introduction to some of my favorite sites and take a couple of minutes and check them out yourself. The links will be provided in the below. The first group of these are the high-profile international intergovernmental data sets and resources. These have been established and managed for many years on key topics in climate change. Importantly, these have Canada data excerpts that are available that give us a telling story when it comes to our own record of CO2 emissions. A couple of high-profile items in this category. International Energy Agency. This is a set of in-depth reports across a range of fuel technologies and climate topics. Next one is International Panel on Climate Change. That's the UN body for assessing the science related to climate change. I have another video dedicated to IPCC reports. You can check the links below. The next one is the IMF Climate Dashboard, and these have a range of indicators that show the impact of economic activity and climate change. Fossil Fuel Subsidy Tracker is another one, and that's a collaboration between the OECD and the International Institute for Sustainable Development, and they address the fossil fuel subsidy knowledge gap. Hey, let's take a closer look at the International Energy Agency. The IEA is an autonomous intergovernmental organization within the OECD framework, and the IAE describes itself as at the heart of global dialogue on energy, providing authoritative analysis, data, policy recommendations, and real-world solutions to help countries provide secure and sustainable energy for all. This is really a set of in-depth reports across a range of fuel technology and climate topics. It's the work of hundreds of experts across 100 or so participating countries. There's a good description of their governance. You'll see that the sources and footnotes are fully described, and their design ensures that the reports and data and the footnotes are extremely accessible. There's lots of PDF versions of things available on specific items. The second group of these include a few of the independent, international, non-governmental sites that deal with some specific topics on climate change. This is just a sample. These also have Canadian subsites and reports that are pretty interesting to us. So a few high-profile items in this category as well. So there's Carbon Tracker, and that's an analysis on the impacts of energy transition on capital markets and the potential investment in high-cost carbon-intensive fossil fuels. There's Climate Funds Update. That's an independent website providing information and data on the growing number of multilateral climate finance initiatives. Those are designed to help developing countries address climate change challenges. There's another one called Plan Up, and that tracks the development of national energy and climate plans in the EU member states. It supports the rapid decarbonization in Europe and promotes good practices on key sectors for policymakers. Another one here is Project Drawdown, and that's data and stories on climate solutions. Let's take a closer look at the Project Drawdown site. The Project Drawdown site is a non-governmental site with an excellent set of courses, communities, descriptions of climate change solutions. They believe that the widespread awareness and understanding of climate change solutions is vital to kindle agency and effective change worldwide. They have country-specific sites all over the place, and there are a number of partnerships, including in Canada. You'll see a great description of their non-governmental standing, and their sources are drawn from all over the world in business and science. The reports are highly accessible, including course writings. A last group of these include some that are close to the action in addressing local opinions, issues, and dealing with news and interpretations. Some of the good examples in this group include Skeptical Science. This is an informative and entertaining website that explains climate change science. Inside Climate News, a Pulitzer Prize winning nonpartisan reporting on climate change and the crises facing our planet. Climate Action Network, this also has Canadian chapters. is a global network of more than 1,500 civil society organizations in over 130 countries, driving collective and sustainable action to fight climate crisis and achieve social and racial justice. Let's take a closer look at one of these. Skeptical Science is a rich and helpful set of resources and tips. It's focused on rebutting global warming misinformation. So they got great educational resources. And it's a nonprofit science education organization registered as 501c3 in the US and has a goal of raising public understanding of climate change. Skeptical Science was created by author John Cook as a resource at the Climate Change Communication Research Hub. And John authored and co-authored many pieces related to climate change and denial. And by extension, the site is described by John Cook as having no affiliation or political organization or with any groups, but it's strictly a labor of love. It's highly worth looking at for the accessible communications and educational pieces that they have. I want to add a last mention on some Canadian-specific items. We'll zero in on these in future episodes. There are many Canadian groups, too many to list here, and I do have a list of some of them, the main ones, in the comments below. If you think I left out some of the key ones, leave some information in the comments and I'll incorporate them into the links. These platforms are a window into the more optimistic side of climate change. They outline how much we know about the environment, and it's a lot, much more than ever before, and the information is more clear and in front of more people than ever before. It also shows what we can do. The technology and the environmental solutions are clear and available and exciting, and they're also really well explained. There's a lot of progress on the amount done to date. It's insufficient, that's true, but the amount of progress is already made is really immense. Seeing how much can be done already helps us understand how much more we can get accomplished. Finally, the existence of these platforms reminds me of the broader story about the effective work that's going on. Hundreds of people all over the world are putting information and stories together, and that by itself is really something. This episode of Climate Action Matters looked at some of the good information sources out there, my favorites, and what we should be paying attention to about them as far as assessing their quality. So therefore, I hope you can take time to search, filter, and navigate and read them yourself. Share the links with your friends. Think of ways to collaborate or contribute to your favorite sites. Mostly, use these to help make it normal to talk about climate change. As usual, the footnotes and the links for all of this are in the below. Press the like button and the subscribe button, and we'll see you next time on Climate Action Matters.